an inspirational leader, performing flawlessly as commanding officer. That from your squadron commander.
That from my squadron commander.
That's pretty glowing.
It is. And to have those glowing remarks, a man that is idolized by his crew, performing flawlessly. I didn't perform flawlessly on February 9th.
Not on that day.
Not on that day. And that's hard. That's humbling.
You made mistakes?
We made a lot of mistakes. I won't say that my crew let me down. They always stood by me. They stood behind me. They stood with me. But on that tragic day, the teamwork failed. I pushed too hard. I got too far ahead in front of my group. I didn't give them the chance to catch up with me. They believed in me. When I spoke, it was truth. I contributed to this. If not, was the cause.
They said you were suspected of dereliction of duty, improper hazarding of a vessel, and negligent homicide.
That is correct.
Those are pretty chilling words.
They are.
According to testimony, the norm in a situation like this would have been about, what, 3 minutes at periscope depth?
Well, at periscope depth, it could have been as long as 5 minutes.
You spent about 80 seconds.
At periscope depth.
With the scope up.
Performing a visual search, correct.
Was that long enough?
In hindsight, it wasn't.
Why didn't you? I mean, that's what...
Because I didn't...
That's the question.
Right, because I didn't suspect that I had a close contact. So I certainly would not have compromised the safety of my crew or the visitors with an irrational act, with something that I didn't think was safe. Safety was my first tenet. At 1:43 and some odd seconds, I found that, or felt that first shudder. It was almost a loud bang, but the sound was odd. It was something that I didn't know, and
I mean, you'd done this maneuver before, never heard anything
times.
like
No,
this.
not at all. When I heard the first bang, I didn't know what the noise was. And then that was immediately followed by another noise and a shudder and a sensation that we were kind of getting slowed down. And it was at that time I knew that something was gravely wrong.
The bang and shudder were the sounds of the Greenville smashing into the smaller Japanese ship, just 1/14 her weight. The sub's rudder cutting through the trawler's bottom. What was the first thought?
The first thought, we've hit something. What is that? What is that noise? I think I was quoted as saying, Jesus, what the hell was that? But in a little bit louder voice. And with that second shudder, or the second noise and the following shudder, I told the officer of the deck, Mr. Collins, I'll stop. Slow down. I need to get this periscope raised. When I raised the periscope, I swung it around, and there she was.
What did you see?
The first thing I saw was high school. Those were the first words that I read, and I thought, oh my God, we've hit some kids. Now, I didn't lose my composure like I'm losing it now. But at this moment, there's disbelief. There's incredible anxiety, almost panic. But I know with all these emotions that are now starting to rage and well up inside me, the captain has got to maintain his composure.
And what was the scene out there as you looked?
The scene as I see is a vessel, and recognize now I'm turning and I'm looking at the periscope, yet my submarine is driving away. I see a vessel that is horizontal, somewhat listing astern to starboard, that is the right side aft, and I see people that are clamoring to get forward. I called out, I said, all ahead full, the captain has the con, right full rudder. That was to get the ship speed up so we could start the turn to get back in the direction where I knew these people would need help.
Was it clear the boat was stricken?
It was clear the vessel was stricken. She was going down and didn't have a lot of time.
You realized the consequences and what this was going to mean?
I knew the consequences as soon as I saw the vessel starting to sink. The crew said, gentlemen, we're prepared for this. Let's calm down, everybody take a deep breath. Let's do our job.
Did you try to mount a rescue effort?
We did. The submarine crew responded very well. Divers were topside. We were prepared to go in the water if we found any survivors. I spoke with the on-scene commander, the Coast Guardman that was there, and he said, all 26 are accounted for. It was a sigh of relief.
When you heard that?
When I heard that, I said, thank you, Jesus.
But he was mistaken.
I was mistaken. Those that he accounted for were all that were in the life rafts, not the entire crew.
And when you found out that 9 were missing?
That's when I said it felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest. I came around the bend, and there were camera crews, too many for me to even count. I asked the tug to come along my starboard side and shield my crew members that were topside from the media cameras. I knew that this wasn't a proud moment. We weren't coming back in declaring victory. This was a very somber, painful, and tragic transit.
For Jill and their daughter Ashley, who had waited together so many times to welcome their sailor back from the sea, this homecoming held no joy.
He walked up and put his arms around my daughter and myself and said, you know, I'm so sorry. I know this is going to be hard.
She was devastated. She hurt for me, as did my daughter. Ashley, we love to death. And that's what makes it painful. Because when we go to her bedroom at night to kiss her goodnight, we know that there are 4 Japanese families that can't do the same. They've lost their loved ones. They've lost their kids. How do you ever say you're sorry for that? Effective immediately, you were relieved of command and your duties as commanding officer.
You expected that?
I knew that. There was no way I could stay in command following an accident like this. It just doesn't happen. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't have allowed it to happen. My wife and I went out and bought parchment, nice paper. I drafted the letters, each one tailored to the family members, to the crew members, to the captain, to the principal of the school, to the prefecture of Uejima, and to Prime Minister Mori.
And you went to the Japanese consulate?
And I went to the consulate.
So what happened?
I entered the office. I was very nervous. I wasn't sure what to say. And when the time felt appropriate, I stood as the vice minister sat, and I bowed deeply to him. And I held the letters in my hand, and I offered them to the vice minister. And tears fell from my eyes when I apologized to him and asked him to pass these words to the Japanese families and tell them that at a time when it is appropriate, I will meet with them in person and give them my personal apology. He accepted the letters, and I was escorted out of the embassy offices. When we arrived at the parking lot, they stood to the left side of my car in single file. I got in, and they saluted me. And I returned the hand salute, and I drove out the gate.
How many times have you relived this?
I can't tell you. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning. It's the last thing I think about before I go to sleep at night, and I dream about it at sleep. And I'm angry. I'm angry at myself because I didn't take longer on the periscope now, knowing that I could have made a difference. And it's that tragedy, personal tragedy, that makes this so difficult.
Some of those who testified, including several you consider to be friends,
Close friends.
deeply questioned your judgment and your decisions that day.
They did.
You brought a lot of this on yourself.
I did. I brought it all on myself in hindsight. And that's why, however I am judged by man, I'll live with that. Give me the punishment you feel is warranted. I will shoulder that as well. I climbed to the bridge, and the young officer of the deck looked up to me and said, "Captain, request permission to get underway." I looked over my shoulder. I said, "My gosh, I'm the man."
He's talking to you.
He's talking to me. Being a submarine captain was the pinnacle of my career. I loved it. It was the most fantastic job that I've ever had.
You were understandably proud of the Greenville.
And I still am.
And wanted to show her at her best for these visitors. But do you think in your most well-intentioned efforts, you pushed too hard?
On that day,
On that day?
on the 8 minutes preceding that accident, I did just that. No one individual can hang for this other than me. And when I say hang, be tagged with that responsibility. It has to be me, because as captain, I am responsible.